After a slow week of college basketball, thanks to teams taking their finals, we are rewarded this weekend with three AP top 15 matchups. But folks, it does not stop there. We've got an absolutely loaded weekend of holiday hoops to get you ready for.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. We are your hosts. He's Andy Patton. I'm Isaac Schade, and it is a pleasure to be with you on this Thursday. And we got to timestamp it, Andy, because we got a lot of time-sensitive material today. We want to thank you, everydayers, for making us your first listen or watch to get your team's info every day. Come, if you'd like to hear more about college basketball and what's going on, join our Locked On College Basketball Discord, where we're talking college hoops all day long. Andy and I are always hanging out there. We'd love to talk with you. The link is in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Andy, coming up on the show today, I know it's Thursday, but we got a fun conversation with San Francisco head coach Gerlofson tomorrow that you're doing. So we're going to have that on Friday. So we're doing our weekend preview today to get you lots of time to listen to or watch this episode. Heading into Saturday, we've still got 7 undefeated teams. Andy and Leaf did a great job talking about them yesterday, and all 7 are in action on Saturday. That's incredible. Right now, as we record, still nothing on the situation at Michigan with Coach Juwan Howard, so we'll get that to you as we find out more. And the biggest news of Wednesday was a 2-week temporary restraining order allowing multi-time transfers to be immediately eligible. So we're going to talk about that later in the show. Before we get there, though, because it's legalese, we want to talk about basketball, and that's what we're doing. As I said, 3 top 15, whatever. I can't talk right now, Andy. That's how excited I am about these. We want to start right now by talking about 2 of them, and that's Arizona and Purdue, number 1 and number 3 in the AP poll. But you know, at the Locked On College Basketball Rankings, this is a 1 and 2 matchup, Andy. That's why you got to stick with us, folks. As well as tomorrow night on Friday, UConn against Gonzaga. Now, Andy, we're going to get into both of these, but here's why I love these matchups. Arizona is the higher-ranked team in that one against Purdue. It's a neutral site, but it's in Indy, essentially Purdue's backyard. UConn Gonzaga. UConn is the higher-ranked team right now, but it's in Seattle, basically Gonzaga territory, even though – right? How many hours away is it, Andy?
It's about a 4.5-hour drive, depending how quickly you want to drive over the pass.
I drive quickly, so let's make it 4. But I love this, that the higher-ranked team is essentially the road team in these matchups. Let's start with the Big Daddy, number 1 versus number 3, or at our rankings, number 1 versus number 2. December 16th, 4:30 Eastern at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. This game's on Peacock. Andy, what are we doing? Welcome to the new Big Ten media deal. I don't even think I'm going to be able to watch it unless somebody hooks me up. But Ken Palm has the line right now, Purdue -2. By the way, if you're going to this game, it's literally at the same time as the Colts are kicking off, also in downtown Indy, so make sure you get there early to find a parking spot. Andy, what do you make of this game?
Yeah, this is a fantastic matchup that I'm unfortunately not enough college basketball fans will get to watch because of the Peacock situation. Just one of those things. I know Gonzaga played a game.
Peacock situation could be a problem at a zoo or in college basketball. Either way, it works.
To me, there's a lot of intrigue in just the individual matchups in this game. I think you have to start, of course, with Zach Edey versus Umar Ballo. Nobody's going to say that Ballo is the same caliber player of Edey, of course, but he is a very big, very physical type of player, the kind of player that there aren't a whole lot of players like him in college basketball. And I think Edey will have to, it will be more of an adjustment for him than we've really had to seen him have to make throughout the season for the most part. But it's also going to come down to guard play, as it always does. For me, Arizona is such a balanced team. And I think I have to read this stat out because it blew my mind. I knew that they were balanced. I wrote in our notes, this is a balanced scoring team. And then I went back and looked at their points per game. Caleb Love is leading the Wildcats at 14.1 points per game. The next 4 players for Arizona, their 4 starters, Keyshawn Johnson, Umar Ballo, Kylan Boswell, and Pella Larson, 12.6 points, 12.5 points, 12.4 points. And if you want to guess the last one there, 12.3 points per game. I could not believe it. All of them literally within a half of a point of each other. That makes them so difficult to game plan against. This team scores 94 points per game. Obviously, people are not able to defend them particularly well. But the thing that's really surprising about them in a big way is Arizona's defense. They're the second-ranked team in the country at KenPom right now. This is, when Tommy Lloyd took over, it was kind of they're going to be a big run-and-gun offense, score a bunch of points, take that Gonzaga mantra and move it over to another program. But you kind of didn't expect them to be this great defensively already. And you can tell the addition of Johnson has helped in a huge way. Just that
Sean Johnson. Yep.
Just such an absolute beast for them in the front court. And it's Purdue's a really tough team to beat. Zach Edey's a really hard player to handle, but Purdue's also got to figure out how to stop this five-sum of starters for Arizona. I think this is going to be an incredibly, extraordinarily fun basketball game.
I love that. I love that note on Arizona's balance, and it's part of what is going to make them so difficult. We've talked about Keyshawn Johnson coming over from San Diego State before, and I think he's been a key. It's great to see Caleb Love being the good version of Caleb Love. I think that was everyone's hope, and hopefully he will continue and have that consistency. Andy, as we were preparing our notes for talking about this, I hadn't picked up on this yet, but Zach Edey's numbers so far this year are actually up from last year when he was the National Player of the Year. His scoring's up, field goal percentage is up, free throw attempts are up, free throw percentage is up, blocks are up, turnovers are down, rebounding is down as well, but he's still sixth in the nation. And so it's like this, what Zach Edey is doing, folks, don't miss it. And I think when we think about, we've talked about it's the guys around Zach that need to do better. I feel like there's been a little bit of inconsistency from Fletcher Lawyer. I don't want to, bag on him, but I say that to say
we'll have to apologize to him later.
Well, you know what? We should at the end of the show. That'd be a great idea. And Foster and his whole family while we're at it. But I feel like Braden Smith is kind of this unsung guy that's been doing a lot, currently averaging 13.2 points, 7.2 assists, and 5.9 rebounds, come close to a triple-double on a couple occasions. And, oh, by the way, just shy of 46% from three. And so that to me is a key for what Purdue has been doing. This is going to be a wild game to watch.
I would add that the only two teams in the country who are in the top 10 for both adjusted offense and adjusted defense, Purdue is 3rd and 10th, 3rd in offense, 10th in defense. And again, Arizona 5th in offense, 2nd in defense. Masterclass for these two teams. And it's going to be, like we said, an incredible game on Saturday.
Got to find a way to get a free subscription or a free trial to Peacock if you don't have it. Andy, let's head out west for a game that will actually tip off earlier than the Purdue Arizona game, although not that much earlier. This game is slated for 10 Eastern on ESPN. This is UConn, 4th in our rankings, 5th in the AP against Gonzaga, 12th in our rankings, 10th in the AP. Again, it's in Seattle. KenPom has it UConn -2. Andy, what a game this is going to be to finally end that week-long finals drought that we were talking about. I cannot wait. I need to go take a nap right now, though, so that I can stay up late enough for it. However, here's what's awesome. You cannot fall asleep because you're going to be in the building. Tell us what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, this is going to be an absolutely fantastic game. So excited to see a rematch between Tristan Newton and Ryan Nembhard. Of course, Ryan Nembhard spent the last 2 seasons at Creighton, so has a lot of familiarity playing with UConn. Of course, this is overall a rematch between an Elite Eight game last year between UConn and Gonzaga, a result that did not go Gonzaga's way in any way, shape, or form, as UConn basically obliterated everybody that they played in the NCAA tournament last year. It's going to come down to how Gonzaga shoots the basketball, because up to this point in the season, they haven't shot it well. They're 33% from 3 on the year. Ryan Nembhard, a 35% shooter last year, came in with the hopes of helping replace so much of the shooting that Gonzaga lost. They lose Julian Strasser, they lose Rasir Bolton, Malachi Smith, those 3 guys all out the door. Tremendous amount of shooting gone. Steele Venters gets hurt before the season starts. He was supposed to be a big shooter for them. And Nembhard, who's trying to kind of shoulder this load offensively and as a floor spacer, he's shooting 19% from 3 right now, 19%. Obviously, that's going to come up as the year goes on, but what a really, really opportune time for him to find that outside shot. He's going to really need it against this really deep, really talented, really long UConn team. And I think from the Huskies' perspective, integrating Stephon Castle back into the offense is a big storyline for them against a Gonzaga team that is very, very good defensively, having one of their best defensive seasons that they've had in a couple of years. Castle, he played 19 and 24 minutes in his first two games before he suffered the injury. He played 10 minutes and 18 minutes in his first two games back. He was in double figures in his first two games, 3 points and 7 points against Carolina and Arc-Pine Bluff since returning. So I think that's a big storyline is this the game where Castle kind of finally gets his full footing under him? Because if this is the game where he does it, that's going to be really big trouble for Gonzaga, who is a good defensive team, but they don't have a ton of depth. And UConn's got multiple ways to attack you with Castle, with Klingon, with Caravan. This is a tough, Newton, of course, this is a tough team. And if Castle's at full strength, they're really hard to beat.
For me, the story in this game is UConn's offensive efficiency. I mean, they just utilize and share the ball so incredibly well. I heard somebody recently describe what UConn is doing. Forgive me, I wish I could credit who it was, but the ball is staying around the perimeter, but the action and the movement happening inside the arc is wild to watch. And from Tristan Newton running the show. And Andy, by the way, I went back, I said, I think in our Big East preview, I picked Newton as my Big 12 preseason player of the year. I did. And I'm so glad I did, because he is making good on that. And I love that whether it's setting up a teammate or calling his own number, he is absolutely doing it. And, whether I'm curious to see whether we get Castle back in the starting lineup or if it will still be Solomon Ball. And then you got Samson Johnson coming in behind Donovan Klingon. And so there's some great dudes that Danny Hurley has in the mix. This team is right on pace to be in that conversation again for a repeat national championship.
I'll toss one more thing out there before we get into Kentucky and North Carolina, which it's shocking that that's the third game we're talking about on today's show. That's how great this weekend slate is. But one thing that Gonzaga might be able to do that could cause some problems for UConn is space the floor with their bigs and pull Donovan Klingon away from the rim. They have four bigs who all play rotation minutes, all over 6'10". Anton Watson is the quote unquote worst 3-point shooter out of this group in terms of percentage. He's shooting 39% from three on the season, 7 of 18. Graham Ike has only taken 10 threes, but he is 4 of 10. The two bigs off the bench, Braden Huff and Ben Gregg, are both shooting over 42.9%. So I think that's an area where Gonzaga might be able to exploit Klingon a little bit and potentially create some opportunities to drive towards the basket with him not there to protect the rim. Isaac, North Carolina, Kentucky, a battle of blue bloods. We also got Kansas and Indiana, another battle of pseudo blue bloods. We don't need to get into the blue blood argument.
You just called Kansas a pseudo blue blood, my friend.
No, I called Indiana a pseudo blue blood.
All right, fair.
We don't need to get into that debate right now necessarily, but those are two incredible matchups that we're going to preview here. Coming up after a word from today's sponsor, Prize Picks. Folks, I've been testing my skills on Prize Picks this season, and it's the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks, submit my entry in less than 1 minute. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. It's just you against the numbers. All you do is you pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Devontae Adams has receiving yards for him tonight against the Chargers is set at 67.5. I think he's going to get more than that against this Los Angeles defense, so I'm hitting more there. If you want to join me, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use that promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks, it's daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Isaac, we got an incredible amount of fantastic college basketball action coming up this weekend. We talked about Arizona, Purdue. We talked about Gonzaga, UConn. Let's get into this Kentucky, North Carolina matchup. The game is going to be in Atlanta, part of the CBS Sports Classic, 5:30 Eastern time on Saturday. It'll be 30 minutes after the end of the Ohio State UCLA game. Another fantastic matchup that we're not even really going to get to today. The line at KenPom right now favors the Tar Heels by 2. Isaac, what do you think about this matchup coming up?
It's so, I mean, you mentioned it, Andy. Ordinarily, this would be far and away the game of the weekend, but with these other two we mentioned, it's nuts. And so I love that we get all of these high level actions. What's interesting to me about both Carolina and Kentucky is they're both these teams that are really talented, but sitting just outside of that kind of top 8 that you and I talked about earlier in the week, kind of knocking on the door, wanting to like be invited to the party. And I think they both have the capability to put it together, but the consistency hasn't been there yet at the level of the teams that are in that top 8. For Kentucky, it is about the youth and getting all of those guys integrated and the injured guys coming back. Aaron Bradshaw's been back for a couple games. Ugana Onyenso has been working his way back, might be available. We're not totally sure yet. For North Carolina, it's the same thing, but it's not the youth. It's all the transfers. Carolina, just like Kentucky, is the pieces are there, but they've got to be able to put it together consistently. Interestingly, these two teams are very similar, both elite in terms of offensive efficiency. If I remember correctly, Kentucky is 14th at KenPom. Carolina is 7th. And then they're good, not great defensively. Kentucky, I think, is in the low 50s at KenPom. North Carolina in the low 40s. So very similarly matched in terms of what we're looking at. Going to be really interesting to see what wins out in this one.
Yeah, I think the big storyline for me is going to be, how does Calipari deploy Aaron Bradshaw? Is he guarding Armando Bacot, despite the fact that they promised him he would be the 4? Is he guarding Harrison Ingram? Is he spacing the floor offensively? Is he trying to bang with Bacot down low? Really fascinating stuff. Curious to see how that shakes out. But Isaac, we got two really fun Big 10 versus Big 12 teams coming up on Saturday as well. Kansas at Indiana, Baylor versus Michigan State. It is a neutral site game, but it is in Detroit, so that certainly favors the Spartans there. Again, both games on Saturday. Kansas at Indiana tips off on 12:30 Eastern time. Baylor and Michigan State tips off an hour and a half later at 2 Eastern time. Kansas, Indiana's on Fox. Baylor, Michigan State Kansas, Indiana's on CBS. Baylor and Michigan State is on Fox. Want to make sure you guys get that right. Kansas by 6, Baylor by 4, according to KenPom. Isaac, which of these, out of these 4 teams, or really out of the Big 10 teams in particular, Indiana and Michigan State, who needs a win more? Because it feels like both these teams can't really afford another loss in a significant way if they want to really challenge for an at-large bid in the NCAA tournament, or at least a top spot in the Big 10.
I mean, it's got to be Michigan State, Andy. Yeah. I think when we think about Indiana, maybe we think that they've been struggling. This is another thing you and I talked about earlier in the week. The Hoosiers are 7-2, and their losses are to UConn and Auburn, who are both top 11 at KenPom. But as we said, those losses were by 20 and 28 points. Their best wins are Maryland and Michigan, and the computers don't really love them. So we kind of feel like Indiana hasn't been doing well. But, man, it's Michigan State. I mean, they hit what for me was the floor, the basement the other day in that loss at Nebraska.
Yeah.
And I mean, this team is, Andy, 4-5.
Yeah.
And now they're playing Baylor. Things are very precarious right now for Tom Izzo. And so I think the Spartans are in dire straits. This is a massive opportunity for them.
Think about this, Isaac. Before the season, if we had said, hey, the Baylor Michigan State game on December 16th is going to be between one undefeated team and one team with a sub 500 record. Before the season, I think the majority of people wouldn't have got the guesses correct.
Yep.
They would have thought Baylor's the sub 500 team and Michigan State's undefeated. And here we are. Spartans they need a win here to get back up to 500. And they need to defeat a team that is undefeated on the season. This is a rough spot for Izzo.
It really is, Andy. And if they want any sort of at-large resume, that it has to happen on Saturday. Andy, let's keep moving down to my wife's home state, the proud Texan. They got sass, and everything's bigger in Texas, and they know it, and they love it. This game, Texas A&M against Houston. It's in Houston, but at the Toyota Center, so not a home game for the Cougs. It's where the Rockets play. 2:30 Eastern on Saturday on ESPN2. KenPom has it Cougars -10. And Andy, I think that is a line too big, and here's why. We think that Parker Ainsworth's team is legit, but this is their biggest pre-12 test in my book. But on the other hand, A&M has lost 3 of 5, albeit to FAU, Virginia, and Memphis. Big opportunity for the Aggies to prove that they are not going off the rails.
Yeah, if Houston wins this game, their odds of staying undefeated, at least into Big 12 play, skyrocket. But this is the first big test for a Cougs team that LJ Cryer's looked great. Where's the rest of the offense going to come from? That's the huge question for them. This is a great chance to kind of prove that they're not just a team that's beaten up on fringe NCAA tournament teams like Xavier and Utah, but that they're the real deal.
Yeah, and worthy of that number one ranking right now at KenPom. Andy, I love this matchup that we're getting to next. I know it might be a little like, really? But yes, number 10 on our polls, number 13 at the AP, Clemson at Memphis. True road game inside the FedEx Forum, 3 Eastern on ESPN Plus. Hopefully you got access to that. Line is Memphis by 1. Really intriguing matchup. Andy, we know, Raekwon Tomlin committed to Memphis, not available to play in this game yet. And I think the big storyline for the Tigers and I said Kenny Hardaway almost, and Penny Hardaway is David Jones.
Yeah, he's been absolutely fantastic. So I think 29 points in one of their recent games. This Memphis team looks really, really good. But Clemson is favored here. I mean, I'm picking the Tigers either way. They're both Tigers.
Let's go Wildcats, not Tigers.
I'm picking Clemson. Even as a road game, Clemson is just so talented. PJ Hall looks like an All-American this year. He's playing at that level. And then, of course, you have Joe Girard, I think one of those sneaky best transfer additions of the entire offseason. I spoke about him with Leaf Tulane on Wednesday's show. We talked about Girard and Keshad Johnson being two of the kind of more understated transfer additions that have obviously helped their respective teams be in the undefeated conversation still at this point in the season. But I like both these teams a lot. I think this is going to be a really nice test for Clemson, but I do think they're going to ultimately pull out a victory here.
Ooh, I love that one. Andy, 2 other quick, really intriguing true road games. Alabama at Creighton and USC at Auburn. Man, I love these games. So Alabama is leaving Alabama. USC is coming to Alabama. And it's a question for me of who stands to gain or lose the most. So Alabama at number 8, Creighton, 8 Eastern on Fox. That line is Creighton -5 at KenPom. And then on Sunday, I believe it is, USC at Auburn, 1 Eastern on ESPN. This one, KenPom has at Auburn -9. Andy, of these 4 teams, frankly, which of them, in your opinion, stands to gain or lose the most?
I think it's USC standing to gain the most, and I'm going to just call my shot here and alienate our boss man, Zach Blackerby, and say that I think that the SEC is going to go 0-2 in these 2 games. I think Creighton's going to beat Alabama. That's going to be a first 100 type of situation between those 2 high-octane, high-powered offenses and Alabama's frankly bad defense. But USC has not been good. They have not been good. They've played a few good games, but they all in all, they just haven't put it all together. Bronny James' second game, I don't know how much of an impact he'll necessarily make, but I like Auburn's guards more this year than I've liked some of them in the past, but I wonder how they're going to handle Boogie Ellis, how they're going to handle Isaiah Collier. And I just see a situation where unless Broome goes off, which he's certainly capable of doing, especially at home, I think there's a chance USC heads to Auburn and picks up a much needed victory. They are in a more Alabama, you could argue, really needs a win over Creighton here, but they're not really expected to win. USC is not favored against Auburn, but it's the kind of game where if you really want to be in that at-large conversation, you got to go win this one. So I think USC is in a bad spot if they don't win this one, but I think there's a chance they're going to go out of town and get a victory.
As for Auburn, it was funny. Zach actually quote tweeted our Locked On CBB top 25 this week and said, should Auburn be ranked? I'll tell you what, if they win this one at home, they should be in good shape. As for Alabama Creighton, Andy, over under 95 3-point attempts in that game. I mean, obviously that's in jest, but that's the kind
it might be over 60, like legitimately.
Yeah. Wild. Can't wait to see everything going up there in Omaha. Andy, a judge in West Virginia just turned college basketball on its head for at least the next fortnight, making every multi-time transfer immediately eligible with a temporary restraining order. What does this mean and who will it impact? We're going to get to that in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. It's $150 if your team wins. Maybe you've been thinking about joining FanDuel. There's no better time to get in on that action than right now. Their app is so easy to use, and they've got a wide range of betting options, including conference regular season championships. Pac-12, that Arizona team we talked about, far and away the favorite at minus 125, with USC second at plus 440. It's even wilder at the Big Ten stuff. Purdue minus 125, Illinois is second at plus 600. That's nuts. If you want to get in on that action, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon for all the college basketball or NFL action this season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Andy, we said it. You have actually already written about it, even on Wednesday as the news was coming out, that there is a temporary restraining order that is allowing all these multi-time transfers to be immediately eligible for at least this 2-week period. What have you learned? What do we need to know? Give it to us.
Yeah, like we said, we wanted to timestamp this show. And so as we're talking right now, it's a little before 6 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday evening. So that is as far updated as we have right now. Of course, you are all listening to this later than that, and perhaps there's been some new updates. But as we're talking right now, every multi-time transfer who has been awaiting eligibility from the NCAA or who has been told they are not eligible from the NCAA, those players are now immediately eligible until December 27th. The NCAA has come out and said they are not going to or can't really do anything to prevent those players from being able to play in that period of time. The thing that we don't know is what's going to happen on December 28th. We don't know whether there will be some kind of rule change where those players are no longer eligible, whether they will then be granted eligibility for the rest of the season. If they play in this 2-week period of time and then are not eligible anymore, will that burn a year of eligibility? Like, those are all the questions that many people are asking right now that, again, as we're recording right now, we don't have answers to. And it has made this situation murky and confusing. And I think there are many larger conversations that can be had when we are not running short on time on the podcast to discuss, like, whether the government should be getting involved in this in the first place, and whether, the overall viability of multi-time transfers. I can kind of see both sides of, players should have some freedom to move schools if they want to. And like, regular students are not, privy to this. And if they're in a good academic standing, why are we telling them they can't transfer, versus coaches who don't want to have to rebuild a roster every year? Like, there are a lot of nuance to this conversation. I certainly don't think that we love that a mid-season decision is putting these coaches and these players in a situation of having to determine, should I, like LSU, again, as we're recording this, the latest report that we have for LSU, this comes from Glenn West on Twitter. He's a writer at 24/7 Sports covering LSU, has said that Jalen Cook is not going to play. Jalen Cook, of course, started his career at LSU, was a 2-time All-AAC player at Tulane, averaged 20 points per game last year for them, is now back at LSU. In theory, this rule says that he can play tonight, again, as we're recording this. By the time you're listening to this, it sounds like he's not going to play. But what does that mean for Primo Spears at Florida State? What does this mean for Brandon Murray at Ole Miss, a team that's currently undefeated and could be adding Murray after recently adding Musa Cisse? What does this mean for West Virginia, who is so desperate for help in the backcourt and could, in theory, get both Raekwon Battle and Noah Farrakhan eligible, along with Kirk Kriisa, who is separate from all of this, is going to come back from his suspension.
That's right.
3 guards joining West Virginia in the matter of a day is a huge change for them. So there's this, but the question is, are these programs going to be willing to play these players over this 2-week period of time? And the article I wrote was at USA Today. We'll link to it in the show notes. That's my way of telling you to link to that in the show notes.
Making a note right now, Andy. Making a note right now.
But most of these teams, even the Power 5 teams that are gaining players, they have 2 or 3 games in this 2-week period of time, and a lot of them are not good games. Typically, teams right around Christmas aren't playing super marquee matchups. So it's like, if you're Utah, do you bring Devion Smith back to play Bellarmine in Utah Valley? If you think you might be risking him losing an entire year of eligibility, probably not. So I think those are the questions that all these coaches now very suddenly have to make quick decisions on. And I sympathize with them. I sympathize for the players. Obviously, some of them may get a chance to play when they otherwise wouldn't have, which is very great for them. But this is not how this should have happened. It shouldn't have happened this way. Even like the Efton Reed and Musa Cisse situations that happened mid-season, like this.
Aziz Bendago.
Yeah, that's a great one too. And Cincinnati's got another guy on this list as well, Jameel Reynolds, who
right.
could be a huge impact for them too. Like, it shouldn't be happening this way. I think that's very clear. I don't think there's any debate on that, but it is. And now these coaches and players have to figure out what the heck they want to do and whether they are willing to risk potentially only getting to play a guy for 2 or 3 games.
Well, and then there's the whole thing of like, if you're only going to have him, whoever it is, for 2 weeks, do you want to risk messing with your chemistry?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, maybe there's the chance that it gets extended further or whatever it is, but are you willing to risk that? To me, if I'm a head coach, maybe I play them mop-up minutes with the bench warmers, but I'm certainly not going to rely on these guys for a period of 2 weeks.
But let's use the Ole Miss situation. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go.
Brandon Murray, fantastic player, double-digit scorer in both of his previous stops. For Ole Miss, I mean, you want to stay undefeated as long as you can. And Brandon Murray is the kind of player who immediately helps impact your program. Like, yes, it would suck to have him for 3 games, 2 or 3 games, and then have him be ineligible again. But like,
do you need him to beat Cal?
That's the thing. Yeah, they got Cal, and I think they got Troy in their next game. So it's like, you don't need him for those games, but are you willing to keep the streak going, to keep playing well? Like, there's a lot of questions that these teams have to figure out.
Well, Andy, obviously lots more we're going to have to unpack about this as more and more news comes out. We'll cut in and do something short if we need to, or follow up with it on Friday's episode. I'd love, Andy, as you record with Coach Gerlofson, to hear his thoughts and opinions on this whole thing. All right, folks, that's it. We're so excited for this loaded weekend of college basketball. If you want to come hang out with us and talk about it in real time this weekend, come join the Locked On College Basketball Discord server. Would love to chat with you there. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on video and audio. Leave us a rating. Like it, smash that like button so we know you are here. Comment on the show as well. As always, and we joked about earlier, apologies to the lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats, and I guess today Tigers as well. And until Friday, peace.